Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to Art of Creation Homestead. My name is Jason, and here we are in Southwest Ohio. It's a nice day in February, and it's getting close to time to plant this garden. We're not planting, but we are planting. We've been buying seeds, thinking about what we're going to grow, and considering our options as far as gardening this year. And honestly, you should start doing the same. So we're going to give you some things to think about. Maybe as you plant your garden, what do you need to consider? What are you looking at? Let's try to help you have the best garden you could have this year, right? Because that's what we're doing for ourselves. We're trying to make sure that we grow things more efficiently, use the right space, grow things we like, be the most productive and effective and efficient that we possibly can be. So first thing we're going to talk about those, when you're planting your garden, hey, plan the space you want to use. First thing you got to do is just what space you're going to use. Like here, here's our in-ground portion. We know we're using that spot because it's already established. It's well established. We're adding bedding and chicken manure and leaves and stuff to it. It's all breaking down, and so we know we're using that. We know we're using these raised beds, right? We also know that we're going to use grow bags and we're use green stalks, and we've got raised beds over here we're using. So we know where we're using it at. If you're trying to establish where your space is at, something to think about is, where do you get the most sun? Your garden, your vegetables need sun to grow. So you need to make sure you're not planting in the shade. We did that. First, maybe our second year here, we put raised beds in the very back here, not thinking that we got trees right above it, so they're in the shade. They're not as productive. There's some things that we can grow there, but not everything will grow there really well. I would never put tomatoes and peppers back there because there's too much shade. So you got to think about those stuff, like what are you trying to grow, and make sure it's going to get enough sun, or make sure it's not going to get too much sun, possibly. But you got to think about that in general. And when you're considering that, let's say, hey, okay, well, you got your space, you know what you want to, where you want to put things, but what do you want to put there? What do you want to plant? Well, this year especially, we've had to do some reevaluating, right? Where last year we reevaluated how we're using this space right here, because we had some raspberry bushes right here that they gotten out of hand. If you're not fully aware, raspberry bushes keep spreading. It's a weed. It's all it is. It's just a weed that produces raspberries. So they just keep spreading over and over and over. And while you can get a lot of raspberries off of it, they had become unproductive because they gotten overgrown, just out of hand. And they just weren't doing us justice. We weren't doing them justice by having them here. We weren't doing this land justice by using this land for that. And it wasn't being productive. So I took the time, ripped them all out. Took them all out so we could replant this right here. And we started using it to grow white Dixie butter peas and some other butter pea style things, but mostly white Dixie butter peas, which we love. So we took something that was unproductive, made it more productive to grow something that we love to eat. And we had to keep doing that again this year. So we reevaluated another space, was something else. This 6x6 raised bed right here, we used to plant winter squashes in it and sometimes okra. They haven't been as productive the last 2 years. The fruit off of them wasn't as good, didn't last very long, so we're not going to do that again this year. So we were planning out what we want to grow, right? So we got the spaces we're using. Now what's going to work well in those spaces? That's another thing you got to think about. So what do you want to plant? When you think about what do you want to plant, start thinking about, have you grown a garden before? Okay, if so, what did well for you? Okay, that's the first thing. What has always done well for you? You may want to grow that. But second of all, you need to think about, what do you use the most of? Or what didn't you? Did you grow something in the past that you just didn't use? Angela and I have had that problem before. We've planted stuff and we're like, hey, we want to grow this. And that's cool, it sounds great to grow, but we just didn't use it the way we thought we was going to use it. It's like okra. We like okra. We don't use it a ton, so we don't plant it every year. We might plant okra once every 2 or 3 years because we don't use enough of it to grow every year. Angela chops it, freezes it, puts it up, and we use it here and there. So it's good for a little while, but we don't use enough of it to grow it every year. There's things that you may have planted before you just didn't like. You didn't eat it, you didn't like it, whatever. So don't plant it, right? It may even look nice, maybe a good novelty. There's tomatoes we've grown before that wasn't our favorite tomato. They look nice, but just didn't just didn't whatever, you know. So don't plant the things you're not going to eat, and don't plant the things you just didn't use. Don't plant the things that have never grown well. It's kind of common sense stuff, but it's a thought process we need to go through when we're talking about planting an efficient and productive garden. But one more thing you need to think about when you're thinking about what you're going to plant is, if you're planting, we'll say, in a green stalk. Okay, so there's a green stalk right here, this 5-tiered vertical planter. I love green stalks. We use several green stalks. If you're using a green stalk and you're wanting to plant tomatoes, maybe find a container variety tomato plant. They have plenty of those out there. There's plenty of hybridized tomatoes. They're not GMO. They're just hybrids that are good for containers. That's something you may want to consider putting in a green stalk, because it's a container, right? So you can find varieties of vegetables and varieties of seeds that you can put in your containers. Now, we're going to mostly use our green stalks for herbs, greens, and maybe a round of bush beans in the middle of the season. But we do plant tomatoes or something in there randomly here too. But that's just what we use them for. That works best for us. They will grow cucumbers pretty well in the right setting. So make sure that you are getting the right variety of that vegetable, the right variety of the seed for your growing medium as well. You got to make sure of that. That's very important. Now, if you're like us and you've been buying seeds for years now, you may have plenty of seeds on hand already. I know we certainly do. We have a plethora of seeds that we just haven't used over the years that are still good. So maybe go through what you have on hand, see what you have. You may have something that you bought 3 years ago. The seeds are still fine, but you didn't plant them for whatever reason. And you're like, hey, you know, I could plant that this year. That's part of being efficient too, is using the money that you have efficiently, right? So you don't want to so if you've already spent money on some seeds that you've never tried before, maybe you want to try them, it's better to go and use those seeds than it is to buy more, especially in this economy, right? People want to make sure they're being as financially efficient as possible. That's part of what growing a garden's about too, is having your own stuff and trying to get more free money in a way as well. But so if you have the seeds on hand, hey, get them. But at the same time, I'll tell you one thing I will endorse is when you're buying seeds, like for us, when we buy bean seeds, so it's in particular white Dixie butter peas and Blue Lake bush bean seeds, we're buying those seeds, we'll go to Haas Tools. We'll go to Haas Tools to buy those because we can get large packages of them there for a really good price. All right, so you can buy bulk seeds at a cheaper price than you can if you buy the little 2-ounce packages. So we'll buy some of those things from Haas Tools in a large quantity and get a much better price. Now, it's more seeds than we'll use in one season, but getting a better price for your seeds that way. So if you have seeds that you can buy in bulk and just get a better price per ounce, essentially, then do that. I will do that. I will endorse doing that for sure. And part of doing that, of having the bulk seeds, is also trying to make sure you have just a little extra on hand, if you can afford some, because they don't all germinate. Sometimes they just don't germinate. Sometimes they get washed out. Maybe you get a lot of rain, a random deluge of rain that washes them out. Maybe a squirrel comes along, digs them all up, throws them all out. We've had that happen plenty of times. Maybe a chicken gets in there and scratches it up. We've had that happen before too. Or maybe you just messed up and planted them too deep. I've done that too, right? Or bugs are in the ground. Those little pill bugs or roly-poly bugs, whatever you want to call them, they're really bad for eating pea seeds. They're really bad for eating those seeds. So a lot of times, that we've had that happen as well. So you may want to have just a little bit extra on hand in case something happens and the seeds don't come up. There's a lot of things that can happen randomly, and then if you just bought just enough, then all of a sudden you're out your seeds and you don't have anything to show for it except frustration. Right? And so to keep from building frustration, buy just a little extra if you can. All right, so that way you make sure you do have something growing. And there you have it. I hope you guys maybe learned a little bit, maybe get a different idea of your thought process, because we all have our different methods and our different processes. But what we're trying to do is just help you in your thought process, right? Because we all have different likes, desires, things we like to eat, and ways we like to grow things. But we all have one thing in common: we all want to be successful at what we're doing. So we're trying to help you do so. And honestly, we're trying to be more successful at what we're doing. We're not perfect. We've had hard growing seasons as well, and we keep changing, reanalyzing, reevaluating what we're doing. We're doing so again this year, and we're always hoping to have the best garden ever, right? And I hope you guys have the same. I hope you guys have the best garden ever. So thank you guys so much for watching. I do appreciate it. My name is Jason. This is Art of Creation Homestead. We love y'all. God bless you, and goodbye.